Hello! Today I would like to talk to you about Clan Selection, arguably one of the most fun sets that have ever come out in this entire game, all 10 years of its existence. I think Clan Selection honestly made Standard probably the most fun it's ever been, comparable to some of the most fun I've had in Vanguard period, to be completely honest. And now while there's a lot of really cool decks and the meta feels really good, and just the game and the format and everything about it feels really amazing right now, the other thing that Clan Selection made possible is to build decks for really cheap. Now, some people's definition of cheap is under $100, but I know for quite a few people it's like $50 or less. So basically, if you can afford a AAA game, then you can probably afford one of these decks. Now I have 4 decks that I want to talk about today, and the first one of which is probably the most competitive of them all, that you can actually pick up for around the $50, €50 price range. Keep in mind that these prices are mostly taken from Card Market, which is a European market site, kind of like TCG Player. I have checked some prices on TCG Player as well to see if they match up. For the most part they do, but keep in mind this is being recorded at early March, and therefore some prices may change over time. And I generally don't like making these kind of market watch or like price videos because these things change really easily and really quickly, so therefore I don't want to jinx it. But I think it's still a really important thing, especially now that the set has been out for a week and the prices haven't really changed too much. I think you can actually go ahead and pick up a lot of these cards. And honestly, especially the first deck, I really think you have a solid chance with in Springfest. The best thing about Springfest is that Standard, the format doesn't really change, and with the Clan Selection, so like after Clan Selection 2 comes out, that's basically the last set, and then you can playtest that format to your heart's content because it won't change. But the format is not solved because we haven't had any events, any big events until now, Springfest. Therefore, there's gonna be a lot of fun things to see what tops and see how the meta evolves over the weeks. Anyway, first deck we're going to talk about is arguably the best one that you can actually get for this budget. Second one will be one that you can start out for under 50, and it will be pretty decent, but it will get better if you pick up a certain staple that goes for $10 a piece. And then the other 2 decks are not as amazing. They're honestly they're good, but they are definitely on the cheaper side. So if you're maybe going for $40 or less, then those decks will be for you. So let's get into it. The first deck of which that I think is by far the most competitively viable from all of these, and honestly a really great deck in Standard going forward into Springfest, is gonna be Stenpeony. So yes, Plant made a return. Katrina may be dead in Premium, but at least she's here in Standard with a new body. And so the kind of objective of this deck is of course to spam Plant tokens in the early game to have a strong early game, and then once you get to your grade 3 turn, you're basically making columns that hit for 30k or more. Therefore you're always asking for 20k plus shield on every single attack, and therefore you whittle down your opponent's hand very quickly, and they usually can't keep up with dealing with that every single turn. So of course our main boss card is the Stenpeony. This goes for about $8 for a playset because they go for about $2 a piece, so very cheap and definitely super recommended to pick up right now. Some people also play the Arboros Dragon Sephiroth at a 2 of, basically just to have a big body, kind of getting to that image of having big attacks that your opponent has to drop 20k plus shield for. These go for 5 a piece, so if you need 2 that would be 10. This is optional and a lot of players don't play it, they just play more grade 2s and grade 1s. So see as you like the deck. You can test it online first before committing to buying the cards, but this is definitely a nice optional card that I also like myself. Maiden of Fallvine is one of the new cards. It's a grade 2. I think this one is definitely very important. It goes for about 130 a piece, so this is about 520 for the entire playset, so still pretty cheap. Now one of the most amazing cards to have ever come out for this clan is Irminsul. This card is a staple in my opinion. Count +1 to power up a column and get the extra draw. You make a column 25k, therefore your opponent has to drop a good bit to guard that one with a force, that's 35, and these only go for 10 cents each still to this day, so that's gonna be 40 cents for the entire playset. Very cheap. Nepenthes finally came out in English thanks to Clan Selection, and this is a pretty important card because she's able to pop your tokens to draw and get a bit of power, and also get boost, and then potentially give crit to your rearguard grade 3s, so that would be such like an Arboros or another Stenpeony on the rear. These go for about 60 cents each, so you're looking at $2 or €2.40 for the playset. Anelma is probably one of the harder cards to get for this deck. They go for about $2 a pop, so that would be 8 for the playset, but I know that in some places they are out of stock. I recommend asking anyone that you know that has opened boxes or cases of the Next Stage Extra Booster, because they'll probably have her in surplus, so just ask around. If not, there's other cards you can replace them with, so like Sylvia or Timber or the Kaivan, so keep that in mind. Those are also a bit cheaper at times, so you can look around and see if you can't find any Anelmas. But she's still really good because she's card draw, she's Soul Blast, which is important because we want to get one of, like, if you ride Flower Carpet, which we'll take a look at in a second, you want to get that into the the drop zone as soon as possible, so soul blasting is pretty important, and she also makes a token, but she's definitely replaceable. Padmini, however, I would say is not replaceable because being able to ride Stenpeony every turn is really important for this deck in my opinion, purely because you're able to make force markers every single turn, therefore pushing those columns to 30k easier and easier, and being able to multi-attack using those force markers multiple times. So I think Padmini is important to actually find those grade 3s for yourself, and you know, just being able to filter them out and get them into your hand to be able to rewrite every turn. Padmini goes for about $6 or $7 each from what I've seen, but I wouldn't be surprised if they go up to like 8. For now, I'll price them at 6 and say $24 for the playset. This is probably the most expensive card in this entire deck from the looks of it, so you can definitely start out with like 2 or 3 copies and slowly build towards the 4th one as you go along. But again, ask around, ask people who opened the next stage, because that set was opened a lot because those clans are really popular, those decks are really popular, and there's chances are that people have Padmini, you might just not know it. Maiden of Flower Carpet is one of the new grade 1s that I mentioned earlier, so 130 a piece, 520 for the playset. So this card is really nice because basically lets you pop your own tokens to get the card back and have an extra 10k shield in your hand. You can basically pop your tokens in the front row to then be able to replace them with other cards in the next turn that will then be able to attack for big numbers. On top of that, it's also good against certain decks that want to eat up your front row, so you're basically just like eating it up yourself in order to actually be able to get extra cards in hand. In the chaos matchup, you can also kill your back row so that if they lock something, it locks to your back row instead, but generally you can just keep the tokens around and they can't even lock them because, well, they're gonna evaporate. But Flower Carpet, of course, is a really good card. And then finally, Maiden of Sweetberry. This is just a rare, goes for 20 cents each or 80 cents for the playset. Just a good token maker, that's all you really want, and so pretty cheap to pick up. Finally, some people play the Draw PG, some people play Millis, which is the Crit Sentinel. We've in testing been finding, we've been actually grinding this deck a lot with my playtesting group, and we've been finding that the Crit Sentinels are a bit better in this deck because of how aggressive it wants to be. The Crit Sentinels only go for 20 cents each, so 80 cents for the playset, so it's definitely going to be really cheap to pick them up, so don't actually sleep on this. I think it's worth trying it out. So for the base build of everything we talked about, it looks like it goes for approximately $55 or so it's slightly over budget, but just barely, and you know, still kind of within that price range of a full price AAA game that goes for about $60, I would say. But yeah, so this is the only one that kind of barely breaks the budget, but of course these prices may go up and down, and therefore it might go under, might go a little bit over, so keep track of prices and just carefully look around. But I think this deck is really worth to pick up. There are a lot of replaceable cards. That's the magic of Neo Nectar, is that everything does what it needs to do, like very similarly. There's more cards you can play that give you power up. You can explore the standard card pool for Neo Nectar and find so many incredible cards that actually help you to achieve the win con and are like cheaper replaceable copies. I'm going to be doing a deck profile of this deck later on in the future as well, and I'll try to talk about some of those alternative cards you can play if you want to stay on a budget. But for now, this is like one of the good builds for the deck, and you can still build it for basically $50, which I think is actually phenomenal. All right, moving forward, we're going to take a look at the deck that starts out under 50, but to upgrade it, it will go a little bit beyond that. But I think even with the base build that goes for under 50, it's still a really good deck, and you can definitely start slowly building towards it over the months as we lead into Springfest. And this is going to be Ghosties. So Ghosty's got a basically main deck focus now, rather than being just like random splashable cards, thanks to Beatrice. So Beatrice herself, of course, enables the multi-attacks and stuff like that, thanks to Skull Dragon and Jessie and all the other Ghosties. So she goes for about $3.50 a piece, so that would be $14 for the playset, the most expensive card in this entire deck. And I mean, the reason why is because she is a super staple in all of Grand Blue. She's a staple in every single standard build, whether you're playing Ghosties or Night Rose. She's a staple in Premium as well, because Soul Blast 1 to revive something is really amazing. And so because of that, I feel like her price might go up in the future as well, so you have to carefully look at this, because that will definitely increase the price of this deck. But Beatrice, of course, is the main grade 3, 4 copies. And then Skull Dragon, generally run as a 2 of or a 3 of. If you're picking up 3, these drop down to 60 cents a piece, which is incredible. This used to be like so expensive, and so now you can pick up 3 copies for 180. Then the one that chains after him is Jessie the Ghosty, goes for about 180 a piece. Some people run 3, some people run 4, so if you want to pick up 3, that'll be 540. If you're running 4, that'll be 720, so let's go with 4. Then Greed Shade, which is, you know, another super staple that got reprinted and became super cheap, now only 130 a piece, therefore 520 for the entire playset. This is again a super staple for Grand Blue. Being able to basically recycle anything from your drop zone into your hand is incredible and just phenomenal. Honestly, amazing card right there. Stormride Ghost Ship goes for about $2 a piece. This is an older double rare that did not get reprinted, so it's a little bit harder to get. So if you want to pick up 1, that'll be $2. If you want to pick up 2, as some decks do, then that's going to be $4, but I've seen quite a lot of lists run just one, so we can just go with that for now. Damien the Ghosty goes for about 180 a piece, or 720 for 4. So this is of course the grade 1 Ghosty that chains off of the grade 2. So again, quite important to have him for the entire combo that this deck wants to do. Then Ripple Banshee is another staple, got reprinted quite a few times now, so it's at 70 cents a piece. Usually people run like it as a 2 of, so that's 140 for the 2 copies. Then Negro Bone, which is a rare that is absolutely amazing, being able to revive anything from your drop zone in the main phase, goes for only 5 cents a piece right now, so that's gonna be 20 cents for the entire playset. Cyril the Ghosty is another Ghosty you can play in this deck to kind of like change up your attack patterns, goes for only 2 cents or 3 cents, so that's about 10 cents for the playset. Navigator, one of the best cards in the clan to this day, being able to set up your drop zone super easily and just turbo out a bunch of cards, and also, you know, make your Skull Dragon really big, goes for 2 to 3 cents a piece, so once again 10 cents for the entire playset. Chappie the Ghosty generally is run as a 1 of and goes for about 10 cents for the copy. People run like 1 or 2 Gusjins, so Gusjin goes for about 30 cents, that is the drop PG that was reprinted in Clan Selection as well. And then we also have Rampage Shade, which is the Crit Sentinel, run at like 2 or 3 copies, so that's basically 30 cents per copy, so 90 cents for the 3 copies if you're running 1 of the Gusjins. So with this deck, as we've spoken about it, it is about $40, so 40 euros or 40 USD for this entire package. However, I'm sure you all noticed there's one really key card that's missing from this, which is Columbard, and Columbard is very important for Grand Blue. Being able to counterblast 1, search for anything, put into your drop zone, and then revive something is like still such an amazing ability that is now like a staple in every single Grand Blue build, and they go for about $10 a piece. And so I mean, if you built this deck for the 40 base budget and are now building up to upgrade it, then you can use your remaining 10 to maybe buy one of the Columbard and then slowly build towards your playset of 4. People also run Tommy the Ghosty, which goes for about $5 a piece, so when you want to be upgrading this from the base build, it's probably going to put you towards the 80 or 90 range, but the base build without Tommies and without Columbards goes for about 40, with 2 Tommies that would maybe be like 50. You can definitely play with the deck and play well with the deck even without Columbard, because it's basically just a search card, but that search card is so great and lets you set up your win con super easily, and you don't have to rely on the navigator to just like mill into everything you need otherwise. But it's still a pretty good deck, and you can definitely, like, if you like Grand Blue and you like what this deck does, you can easily build this deck and slowly upgrade towards it over the months to come if you do enjoy it. Again, with all these decks, I recommend trying them out online first, or printing out proxies or things like that to see if you enjoy the feel of the deck before committing the money, especially if you're on a tight budget. Alright, so now we're going to look at 2 decks that I think are more not so competitive. Maybe the first one is a little bit more so, but they're definitely super cheap and a good bang for your buck. So the first one of which is going to be Tachikaze's Gigano Blazer with Gaia Emperor. So this deck basically, what it does is powers up sets up a field full of equip gauges, powers up the front row, and then calls stuff from killing stuff with equip gauges that then calls from that equip gauge. So you basically do a lot of multi-attacks, you get a little bit of a power up to the front row, but if your opponent hits like double defensive, the deck kind of folds, but otherwise it's still really strong. It got a bit of traction in Japan even as well, being kind of seen as a pretty good deck overall, and I've tried it myself and it's really fun. So even if you're not going for a super competitive play with this deck, or like you're not grinding for Springfest with this deck and you just want to have a fun one to have on the side, this one is genuinely really fun. So Gigano Blazer himself is a new grade 3 that helps to, you know, going first, set up your field with gauges and get a bit of an extra power up. Goes for 180 a piece, so that's 720 for the entire playset, so it's overall pretty cheap. And the backup grade 3 Gaia Emperor, you would think from an old VR that it would be like $5 or $6 or $10. Nope, this goes for 150 a piece, so that would be 6 for the playset. Some people play 2 or 4 Gigano Blazer and then 2 or 4 Gaia. You can choose how you want to play your grade 3s. Gaia basically does what Gigano Blazer does, but going second or as your turn 4 ride if you went first. That plus 10k to the front row is much better than the Gigano Blazer, but the setup power and the draw power isn't as great because the draw 2 from Gigano Blazer is really nice. But Gaia, just $6 for playset, very cheap. Terizino goes for just 5 cents a piece, so that would be 20 cents for the entire playset. This is the retire grade 3, so you know, also important for your entire combo. Spino Extort is the new grade 2. This goes for 130 a piece or 520 for the entire playset. This basically helps to just have more multi-attacks being enabled by a single card, and that is really good. Megarex got reprinted. This has been a staple in Tachikaze for as long as I can remember now in standard, and goes for only 40 cents a piece, so that's 1 160 for a playset. Definitely a great card that helps you like draw your pieces, set up gauges, and just like attack for big power. So definitely a great card. Dilopho Pyro is another important combo piece, goes for about 80 cents a piece. So again, we're looking at very cheap cards here. That's 320 for the entire playset. Regiodon is another combo piece that goes for 5 cents a piece because it's only a rare, and that's 20 cents for the entire playset. So that's all your grade 2s are basically combo pieces that either combo off one another or retire your stuff to proc effects that combo off into something. So very cheap so far. Savage Shooter is the new grade 1 that helps you have a pretty nice turn 1 where you just like set up gauges already. 130 a piece, that's going to be 520 for the entire playset. Blue Sprint is another cold from gauge card, so basically another combo piece, goes for 5 cents a pop or 20 cents for the entire playset. And then some builds either play the Lacertex or the Prism Bird. Lacertex for basically, you know, just having another card that puts your gauge to your hand. This goes for 20 cents a piece or 80 cents for the entire playset. Prism Bird on the other hand is a grade 3 searcher. You play a lot of different grade 3s and they all have like a different function at a different time of the game, and you kind of want to have all of them anyway. But if you want to run the grade 3 searcher, that goes for about 150 a piece, so $6 for the playset. And finally, Perfect Guards only go for 50 cents a piece, so then that's €2 for the entire playset. Therefore, this entire deck is $32 with the Lacertex or $37 with the Prism Bird. So absolutely very cheap deck, barely $30. That's actually honestly amazing to see how this is like a genuinely viable Axel deck too, that you can definitely experiment with and try to grind out different matchups. Don't expect it to be like tier 1 or anything, but at the same time, this is definitely a really fun deck that you can pick up just for fun as well. And the fourth deck I'm going to take a look at, which I think is kind of at the bottom of this list, is Venom Stinger, which is definitely buildable for less than $40 as well. Venom Stinger himself, the main grade 3 is 180 a piece, that would be $7.20 for entire playset. And then the Intrude Scissors, which kind of enables the 5 attack combo, goes for 180 a piece as well, so also $7.20 for the playset. Dove Speed is run as like a 2 of in your grade 3 slots, which is at 5 cents or 10 cents for the 2 copies that you need. So again, very cheap here as well. Machining Mantis helps you find all those grade 3s, that goes for 40 cents because it's now been reprinted twice, or $1.60 for the playset. Megalara Lancer, this is basically the grade 2 that powers up and disables intercepts, goes for 150 a piece, so that's about $6 for the entire playset. And you know, it's a triple rare, so for that price it's definitely very nice. The new grade 1 High Class Moth is about $1 a piece or $4 for the entire playset. So again, that's a great grade 1, and it's nice that it's also that cheap. Butterfly Officer has had a few reprints now, this time in triple rare foil. The average of most of those prints is about 50 cents a piece, so you're looking at $2 for the entire playset. Stealth Millipede is a promo that used to be super expensive that is now 60 cents a piece, so $2.40 for the entire playset. This is very important for countercharging and just like managing your resources, and therefore it's really nice. Perfect Guards go for about 30 cents a piece, so that's about $1.20 for the entire playset. Really cheap. And this build that I actually pulled from the Clan Selection Primer on the Brainstorm for 2 blog runs the Lyrical Veil to basically recycle your units and give them intercept. These go for 25 cents a piece, so basically $1 for a playset, and they come from the Bermuda set, but I think these are actually worth running in quite a few decks, this being one of them. So overall that totals to about $35 for the entire deck. It's not competitive, I would say. It's more of a fun deck, but definitely worth experimenting with, and especially for that price I think is definitely very nice. There's definitely going to be a lot more budget decks coming in Clan Selection 2. I think this set has a lot more upgrades to older decks that are more expensive that make them really nice and up to date with the meta, whereas next set there's a lot of decks that you can build just from that set with like a few random support cards here and there from older sets. But if you have any of these older decks that you want to upgrade from Clan Selection 1, any of these following are really cheap to build. So Chronojet, if you built it last year, super cheap to upgrade. You got your 4 Rebels, your 2 Time Leapers, your 4 Lost Gear Dog 8, and your 3 or 4 Zaid. Spectral Duke and the entire Vortimer engine is really cheap to pick up, that you can basically, like if you had played Gurgwid, you can just take out the Gurgwids, put in the Spectral Duke engine, and then you play it with Percival. If you play Yasuye or Hyuga, you probably have Shirayuki, so you can build Shirayuki off of that. The cards in this set are quite cheap. If you played Sharot last year, then basically putting in the new grade 1 and the grade 2 plus the 2 of Gastil is also really cheap into this deck. And if you played Night Rose, it's also really cheap to upgrade because you basically just need 2 of the Beatrice, and maybe you want to play the deck mixed with the Ghosty engine, so you pick up some of those cards. But as you've seen already, those are really cheap, and you can upgrade those decks for like $30 or less. I think those are super cheap upgrades, and they will turn your deck into something that maybe wasn't super tier 1 until now to essentially I mean, outside of Shirayuki, into tier 1 contenders. I think even Spectral Duke has been seeing so many results in tops that some people are considering it a tier 1 contender as well. So yeah, this set, Clan Selection 1, has definitely been magical. I really love everything that they've done with this set and with Clan Selection 2 as well. This has been the most excited I've been for Standard in a really long time, and I've just been playing it every single day, just like testing for Springfest, testing for shop leagues and all that kind of stuff. It's really rewarding to play right now, and it just feels super good. So I want as many people to be able to enjoy it as possible. So if you want to pick up something like plants that I talked about at the start, honestly, just go for it and just have fun. If you want to pick up any of these cards and you live in Europe, whether it's clan sets or actual single cards, you can do so at parkage.com using the discount code DifferentFight to get 5% off your order. Anyway, on that note, that's going to be it for today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you like these type of videos, let me know. I'm probably going to do another one for Clan Selection 2 once we actually know the kind of European and US prices for those cards, because I think there's going to be a lot of, if we're going off the Japanese prices, which for the most part, Clan Selection 1 matches the JP prices as well, then there's going to be a lot of budget decks coming in Clan Selection 2 as well. So if you want to hold off and wait for that as well, you can do so and still be preparing for Springfest coming forward as well. Anyway, that's going to be it for today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.